Welcome to Liberty Talk Canada. I'm Odessa Orlewicz. Thank you for joining me. I've been away for a couple of weeks from doing these shows because I've actually been downtown Vancouver and listening on the phone, and I'll explain that. Uh, while covering the judicial review, Bonnie Henry, who is going up against healthcare workers who have brought her in for a judicial review because of their vaccine mandates. And I don't know if this is the sixth or seventh sort of lawsuit that she's been dragged through, but this is a judicial review. It's different. I actually did notes on the whole thing. If you guys want to check it out on Twitter, I also did audio recordings all the way up until day 9. And if you join libertytalkcanada.ca, if you go on there to my website, there's a place you can sign up for my email list. I will email you the audio summary of every day up until and ending with day 9 as to what's going on with the judicial review. You'll hear the healthcare workers lawyer, you'll hear Bonnie's lawyer, they rebut, you'll hear how Bonnie is trying to sell this, why she wants to keep these mandates. You'll learn a lot. And the case is on a recess until December 18th. I will go back to listening in for the 6 to 7 hours a day that they are in court discussing this in a judicial review. And I will do days 10, 11, 12 for you guys as well until it's over. So thank you guys so much if you've been listening and watching the audio tapes and going on Twitter and all your support. I really appreciate it. But it's nice to be back actually doing a show. I feel very out of touch. So there's a lot going on in the world that I've been wanting to report on. And I will talk to you guys about a few things going on before we get into the main topic about what has just happened to New York City under a Democratic governor. And it's ugly. It's Theresa Tam's wet dream. It is horrific. And it's what everyone said was going to happen. And it's starting to happen. And it's scary and it needs to be stopped. And I'm actually going to show you the lawyer who is taped in court showing exactly what happened during this lawsuit. It's only about 20 minutes long. It's the main content of my show today. This should be about a half an hour show so that you can understand what just happened in New York City. And it's despicable. It's inhumane. I have no words. But other news, I have a friend, Adrian, who I want to recommend to everybody. Adrian Spitters is part of our community. He lives here in BC, although he can give advice for everybody in Canada. And he has been part of our freedom movement since day one. In fact, he's helped me find content. And if you want an awake wealth advisor and part of our community, I cannot recommend Adrian Spitters enough. He has been with us since day one, like I said, of the lockdowns. And you should check out his website, adrianspitters.com. That's 2 T's, adrianspitters.com, or email Adrian at adrianspitters.com because he is a wealth advisor who helps awake people and to keep them investing in what he believes in, regardless of, what's coming ahead. And so I have put his link in the description. Tell him Odessa sent you. Already a lot of people are going with Adrian. I'm finding out that they purchased gold and then they found out about Adrian and they're coming in. Adrian is a veteran wealth advisor. He's the bomb. I love him. In fact, we're going to sit together this Friday at a Christmas dinner for the BC Conservatives. I'm going to go because I want to hear what their speeches are. I want to hear how they compare to even what Maxime Bernier is saying, even though they're provincial. I want to go support John Rustad and the other fellow who have been going to Parliament and exposing these books and what are actually in them. And they are doing an incredible job trying to support parents about these books. So thank you, John Rustad. I'm going to come to your dinner and support you this Friday. Now, another thing, you guys may have seen this New Zealand whistleblower, this man, Barry Young, and he's the statistician that actually worked for the whole COVID thing. And he was the one that recently, and it's going viral, has whistleblowed about the bad batches and the amount of horrific death that's happened with that. And he decided to come out and expose what he's found with these bad batches. And it has gone viral on Twitter, and he just got arrested for doing that. He's been arrested by the New Zealand authorities for exposing this. This is a very strange time to be living in. It's horrible, and let's all pray that he gets out of there, that he's getting the help he needs from lawyers. I mean, my thoughts are, and I don't go down the rabbit hole as much as other people even. My thoughts are either this is real and this is happening, or it's a psyop and they are wanting to show everybody what happens to you if you expose the truth. It's one or the other. It's probably just that he really was arrested. So let's hope he gets out. I will try to keep tabs on what's going on with that. His name is Barry Young, and you guys may have seen that he has been doing videos exposing these batches, and it's not good. One of them was almost up to 50% mortality rate in batches. There was 20%, something like 30%. I can put that on my Telegram channel. I will put the poster that shows what he was showing. I have seen his videos. If you guys want, you can share them in the comments on like Rumble, Facebook, BitChute, Liberty, wherever I've shared this. If you have seen his videos, please share them. I've seen them as well. And as well, before we get into my main topic, CNN has now put out publicly that we should have carbon passports to limit our travel. I know we've been warning about this forever, but it's actually being talked about publicly. And they said that by 2040, this is probably going to be in place. Something named Intrepid Travel, they actually quoted in their article that by 2040, this is probably going to be in place. I Googled it to make sure CNN's not the only one talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. This is the plan to limit your travel based on carbon. But of course, only if you're a pleb, not if you're the elite, not if you're the ones making the rules, right? But ironically, in the same token, at the COP28, where everybody goes who are the elite, they're not the elite, they're the parasites, but, we call them the elite. They all go to COP28 in their private jets and talk about what they want to do to everybody else in limiting their freedom. Well, unexpectedly, the president of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber, went and said publicly, there's no science to phase out fossil fuels. This will take us back to living in caves. So that's making the rounds. That's kind of interesting. I also was on the phone with Wayne from What's Up Canada just before this show. We're friends. And he said that, Odessa, did you know that there's actually 2 more countries that just told the WHO to screw off with what they want to actually do to our freedoms? He wasn't sure what the countries were. I'm going to look into that. But that is since I brought James Roguski on. So Wayne thinks 2 more countries have joined with that. We'll have to check on which countries that was. And then lastly, before we get to the main topic today, the WEF, one of their main leaders that goes by the last name of Jurgen, has now stated publicly that we will have a cyber attack by 2025. How does he know that? Well, it's interesting. Fauci said as soon as Trump came into power to a bunch of high-end investors in an auditorium, I've showed the tape, just so you guys know, in the Trump presidency, there will be a pandemic. So you know what to invest in, right? Wink, wink. Somehow he knew too. Now the World Economic Forum is already saying some awful bad actor could do this to us. Right, you're the bad actor. And if you want to look more into this, Whitney Webb, who I'm sure you guys all know is an amazing journalist, she explains how they can easily pin it on any country they want. It's through some tech they have. She explains it. And she also exposes CTIL files, the Mike Schellenberger files. And those were leaked that the US and the UK created military contracts just after Trump and also with Brexit. I guess they freaked out and they came out with a big tech way of creating censorship. So they have military contracts once there was Brexit and Trump, they've come up with these military contracts. I guess they've been leaked. They go into it in redacted, and they go into it with Whitney Webb, who is probably the best journalist at covering all this stuff. All of these links will be in my description, I promise. And quick message from my sponsor, and we will get right into this court case that you don't want to miss. Did you know if the banks do a bail-in, they can take the contents in your bank vault? But storing your gold and silver at home could be a huge security risk. Every day, our dollar is worth less and less. Inflation is stealing the only savings families have. Now more than ever, it's so important to hedge the savings you've worked so hard for. Banks have been failing all over the world, and social credit has all but arrived. But did you know you can do wholesale price vaulting and retail delivery from the most prestigious, reliable company in Canada? Did you also know if you decide to leave Canada, your gold and silver can be sent right to you after you arrive to your destination? The only company I personally use and trust are those awake guys at New World Precious Metals. Take control of your family's future. You can just click the link in my show description or type in the web address libertytalkcanada.ca/gold to get on their mailing list, attend their webinar, or book an appointment. Let them know Odessa sent you. All right, let me show you this amazing lawyer battling it out in court. This is after, in the lower courts, she had won. The people had won to try to stop this. And instead, this awful governor, Kathy Hochul, I believe is her last name. Kathy Hochul from the Democrat Party, of course. She was hell-bent on overriding this lower court, saying she can't do this. She brought it to the Supreme Court of Appeals, and watch the fight that this lawyer gives in stating how horrific what they want to do is.
Good morning, Your Honors. If it pleases the court, my name is Bobby Ann Flower Cox. I'm here on behalf of the plaintiffs. I have my lead plaintiff with me here today, Senator George Borrello. I think we got a little bit off track here. I'm going to pull us back on track. The first thing I'd like to do is get on the record what this regulation actually says. And then I'll go into some of the details on how it conflicts with our existing...
We certainly don't need to read the regulation to us.
No. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to read it. So Rule 2.13 gave the Commissioner of Health the unbridled power to pick and choose which New Yorkers she could lock up. I'm saying she because at the time it was Dr. Mary Bassett. She could lock up or lock down. She didn't have to prove you were sick. She didn't have to prove you were exposed to a communicable disease. She didn't have to prove you were a health threat. She could issue an isolation or quarantine order at whim. It didn't have to be a state of emergency. That quarantine order or that isolation order would determine how long you were in lockup or lockdown. They could have locked you up in your home, or they could have removed you from your home with the force of police as clearly delineated in 2.13. With the force of police, they could have removed you from your home and put you into a detention center, a facility, whatever you'd like to call it, whatever noun you choose, it gets you to the same place. It's not your home and you don't get to pick where you go. They could have locked you up there for however long they wanted, no restrictions, days, weeks, months. There was no age restriction. So they could have done this to you, but they also could have done this to your child or your grandchild or your elderly parent. The provision said that they could tell you what you could and couldn't do while you were in lockup or lockdown. They could use the police in order to make sure you were abiding by their isolation or quarantine order. And if you disobeyed, you would be subject to either civil penalties, which could be up to $2,000 per day, and each day that you disobeyed their order was a new violation. So if you disobey their order for 10 days, that's $20,000 in fines.
Is there a cap?
I believe it was up to $2,000, yes, Your Honor. And so there was the civil aspect, and then there was also the fact the fact that they could use criminal penalties against you if you disobeyed one of their isolation or quarantine orders. And when we were at the trial court last year doing oral arguments, the trial court judge specifically asked, if you issue me an isolation or a quarantine order and I disobey, I don't want to go, can you get the police to come and arrest me and take me to a facility somewhere? And the Attorney General's response was a resounding, yes, we can. That's what the regulation says we can do. So that's my overview of the regulation. It severely conflicts with the public health law. Okay, specifically, the lower court did not err when it struck down this regulation, saying that it violated, conflicts with Section 2120 of the public health law, which since 1953 has been our isolation and quarantine law. In 1953, the New York State Legislature weighed what they weighed the rights of the individual against the government interest in keeping our society safe, and they came up with this law, which is full of due process protections.
But counsel, did it really conflict with 2120, or did it exceed the powers delegated to the Department of Health by the legislature?
It's both, Your Honor. It's both. So the lower court ruled that and struck down this regulation because, yes, it conflicts with Section 2120 of the public health law. It also conflicts with Section 2100 and Section 12 and 12-A and 12-B, but primarily the provisions of Section 2120, which is our quarantine law, are violated significantly by this regulation. And in promulgating this regulation, the lower court also found correctly that the Department of Health overstepped their bounds. We use Boreali in our analysis because that is what the Court of Appeals says to use. When you are trying to figure out, in New York State, when you're trying to figure out if an agency has overstepped their bounds and crossed into that legislative, lawmaking, policy-making realm, you use the four prongs of Boreali. And opposing counsel doesn't contest that. They use Boreali themselves. It's just that they argue that Boreali favors them. They think all four prongs of Boreali favor them. The trial court below has already said that the three of the four prongs of Boreali clearly favor our side, and that fourth prong, he did not rule against us on the fourth prong. He simply said it didn't weigh in favor of either side.
I'm going to let her continue, obviously, but I looked at a bunch of the documents, and I'm actually going to put them in the links in the description as well. They can remove you from your home and put you in a detention center, even if you haven't been exposed to anything, you're not sick. They can, just if they think you're a threat. They can also remove groups of people, just round up a group of people and put them in detention centers. So they also mention that they can round up that group of people, put them into the facility, hold you down and force vaccinate you, or do other medical treatments to you. That's also what this is about. So are they going to round up protesters? Are they going to round up people who do convoys to say we don't want to do this? Are they going to round up people who didn't get their third dose? Why is this governor so hell-bent on getting this put in place when the people have spoken and they don't want it, and the lower court said you can't do this? The other interesting thing, well, not interesting, very obvious, is, of course, the AP fact check came out, and this is what they said. It's a fake story that New York is going to force quarantine people who are not sick because people are calling it camps. So the AP in their fact check said, it's not true. No one will be forced into quarantine camps, because camps was not used in any of these documents or in the court case. But because people who've been sharing this called it a camp, they said, nope, it's not true. They didn't say, but they can put you into a hospital, detention center, any structure, anywhere, any buildings they want. If you look at the documents, that's what it says. So the fact check literally said, nope, it's not camps. with no context. And if anyone could get off their butt and actually look, the governor won the appeal. And how she won it was based on a technicality, not that these judges think they want her to be able to do this. They didn't say that. They didn't say, yeah, this is kind of a nightmare. And wow, why would you be able to lock someone up for any reason you want? With no due process. They can pick you up, stick you where they want, and you can try to sue afterwards. But let the expert here tell you exactly what's going on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
However, in arguing Boreali, they say it works for them, we say it works for us. The whole premise of Boreali is it's only used as a test to determine whether or not an agency has overstepped their realm. And so, yes, to answer your question, the lower court said, we're striking this down because it conflicts with Section 2120, and an agency cannot make a regulation that conflicts with a law, which the Attorney General does not contest that. They actually say it in their own papers, both here on appeal and at the lower court level. They acknowledge that agencies have to have an enabling statute or statutes to give them the power to make a regulation. And in this case, they did not have one. Certainly they did not have one. If I could just point out a couple of the glaring conflicts between Rule 2.13 and Section 2120 of the Public Health Law. I do have a chart that I put in my brief, which starts on page 13. I will direct the court to that. It starts on page 13 and it runs, I think, till page 15 or 16, because there are a lot of differences between this regulation and the law. But I just want to go over a couple of the main differences to point out to the court today. First of all, our law, which we've had for 70 years, says that in order to even consider isolating or quarantining somebody from society, they have to first actually have the communicable disease that we're talking about here. Whereas Rule 2.13, there is no need for the Department of Health to prove that you are infected or exposed to a communicable disease. That is very clear in the language. The second thing that I want to point out on the conflicts is that once a doctor, according to the law, confirms that you actually are sick, and if they are concerned that you can't keep your germs to yourself, in essence, then the doctor would refer the matter to the local health authority. The local health authority, not the commissioner of state. The local health authority would then, if they think that there's a possible problem here with this person, they would start an investigation. And they gather their evidence, and if at the end of gathering their evidence, they think, yes, we have a problem here, this person is infected and is a public health threat, two-prong test, then they refer it to a magistrate. And a magistrate, a third-party, unbiased judge, gets to look at the evidence. There is a hearing. The person is afforded an attorney if they cannot afford one. And there's due notice that a hearing is coming up. Whereas the regulation says they can knock on your door with no due notice and they can hand you an isolation or a quarantine order. Ex parte, no hearing, no due notice, no right to have an attorney before you get locked up or locked down in your house, no right to contest any sort of evidence against you. There is no evidence against you because there's no hearing provided in Rule 2.13. It says you have the right to an attorney and judicial review after you're locked up, right? It's guilty until proven innocent. It's tremendous.
We understand that.
Okay, sorry, getting a little emotional, sorry. So just one other thing on the conflict between the rule and the law, Section 2120 of the Public Health Law, is that the law clearly says that if the judge determines that, yes, you are infected, and yes, you are a public health threat, you can't or you won't comport yourself in a manner to protect those around you, then they can issue an isolation or a quarantine order and put you into a hospital for care so you can get better. That is not what the rule says. The rule says the Commissioner of Health can pick any place that the Commissioner of Health wants to put you. You have no say, and including the words residential or, quote, residential or temporary housing. So it's a stark contrast to our law, which we've had for 70 years, which sets out the policy that our legislature carefully weighed the rights and the concern of the government and then came up with this law. So that's what I wanted to say on the reg itself. And
Also, before I forget, I watched an Epic Times reporter report on this, and he looked at the documents too, and he said, it says you can go outside for fresh air, but you can't leave. You'll be trapped. Well, they let people in prison out for fresh air once a day too. Well, they're supposed to. A lot of that's being broken. They haven't been letting the Coots 4 do that, even though it's against the law. So don't worry, you can go outside, but you're trapped. And if you try to escape and you try to leave, you'll go to jail and get fined.
On the differences between the reg and Section 2120 of the Public Health Law, we do also put
Counsel?
forth. Yes.
Forgive my interruption, but the other side indicated that they were relying on Section 2100 of the Public Health Law. There's two bases, 2100, and secondly, 225 5J.
Yes.
And 5A was probably too broad, albeit provides support. What about 5J? Doesn't that seem to provide for this kind of regulation?
No, Your Honor, it doesn't. So first, I'd like to point out that their enabling statute has been a moving target. We've been litigating this case for 1.5 years now.
Well, we just heard two.
Yeah, we just heard two. Okay, so I'll go with those two, because all the other ones they've cited.
And for my purposes, all I'm asking for is about 225 5J.
Okay, so
It talks about established regulations in respect to contact or communication with or use of infected premises, places, or things.
Yes, exactly. So
Does it apply to people?
I'm sorry?
Does it apply to people?
It does not, Your Honor. No. And with statutory construction, as Your Honors know, we are compelled to first look at the actual verbiage that's used in a statute to interpret the legislative intent of the statute. So before we even start going through the archives and seeing, well, what were the debates like when on the Senate floor and the Assembly floor to see what did the legislature intend, we first look at the actual language.
And obviously, we're well aware of that.
Yeah, no, I know. Yes, thank you. 225 5J says nothing about isolating or quarantining human beings. So it says they can establish regulations in respect to contact or communication with or use of infected premises, places, or things. That's it. So opposing counsel saying, well, that automatically kind of would assume that we can regulate people that go in and out of those places is absurd. I mean, it doesn't even pass the straight face argument here. When countless cases from the Court of Appeals have held that when the legislature wants to delegate their power to an agency, they have to speak clearly, especially in the area of constitutional rights. So if the legislature wanted to pass a law that enables the Department of Health to make a regulation that allows them to arbitrarily pick out New Yorkers with no proof they're sick, with no proof they've posed a threat to other people, with no hearing beforehand, no notice, no right to an attorney to represent them before they get locked up, then it's not in the public health law. If they wanted to make it a provision in the public health law, they could easily do that. And in fact, A416, which opposing counsel brings up, did try to do that. That bill was proposed since 2015. It came about because of an Ebola outbreak, and a New York City member of the Assembly proposed this A416. It had prior numbers beforehand, but most recently it was A416. And for 7 years, from 2015 straight through December of 2021, A416 was proposed in the New York State Assembly. It is the same sum and substance, which the lower court did agree, the same sum and substance as Rule 2.13 that the Department of Health has issued in this case. It got no support whatsoever. It was proposed in the New York State Assembly Health Committee for 7 years in a row. It never made it onto the agenda of the Health Committee.
I think we understand that.
Okay. It never went anywhere, is my bottom line. It didn't have a sister.
Why is this governor so set on being able to put people that are not sick nor been exposed away as a health threat? Because they're seeing what they tried to do last time isn't working anymore. They seem to be aligning themselves with the WHO and the UN. If I was you, I would get the hell out of New York and I would move to a Republican state, because it's the Democrats that are doing this kind of thing in America. I mean, up here, our only hope is probably Alberta right now. I don't even know about Saskatchewan to try to, not have this happen here. I mean, we know that this is Theresa Tam's dream. Remember that documentary that she was the star of? Well before COVID, in saying that we could just go and get people and lock them up, and this is what we could do. And it was the most bizarre documentary, and it put her in such a bad light when people started to share it after she was announced as the Canadian Health WHO person. People started sharing this scary document that she was saying some crazy things in. Well, they started taking it down and making it very difficult to find. There are some people that still have it, but this is Theresa Tam's dream. And the laws put in place before, there was nothing wrong with them. I mean, I don't think there should be any laws, but what I'm saying is there was a due process. You had to be sick. You had to have a doctor say you're sick, that it can spread. And yes, I know terrain theory versus viral theory. I'm not here to argue that. I'm just telling you the facts, that they want to override anybody's rights, that for any reason they can pick you up and lock you up.
Proposed law in the Senate. And the amicus brief that was submitted last year at trial court, which is part of the record before your honors, which was authored by Assemblyman Andy Goodell, gives a very detailed analysis of the treatment of A416. If you're interested, that is in the record before you. So I think it's clear that the Department of Appellants do not like our current New York State law, our policy on how we remove people from society if they are a public health threat. They don't like Section 2120 of the public health law. They think it's not good enough in time of emergency. And they have made that very clear both at the trial court level and here on appeal. At the trial court level, when we had oral arguments last year, the Attorney General's office was crystal clear. In essence, this pandemic has shown us that we can't have, all these different courts around the state, deciding if someone should be isolated or quarantined. We need to centralize power. We need, here in Albany, Commissioner of Health, we need to centralize power and be able to control 19 million New Yorkers with the flick of a pen, right? So if they want to change.
This blonde lady in the middle, this judge, she's a real doozy. She's smiling and laughing. She makes fun of things. She's just she just thinks this whole thing is really funny, destroying people's lives, force injecting them, putting them in places where they can't see their friends, family, make a living, no judicial process, nothing. She thinks this is pretty damn funny, this judge. It's despicable.
The law. If they want to change the public health law and make it more centralized, if they want to take out the due process protections that are currently in our quarantine law, all they need to do is ask the legislature to change the law. It's very simple. The Constitution provides 3 branches of government. Legislative branch is the one that's supposed to make law. So if the Department of Health wants to change policy and change the law, no problem, peddle your goods to the New York State Legislature and see if they'll change it. one last thing I want to just point out is our overarching question here on appeal is really, does the Department of Health have to follow New York State law when they want to remove someone from society who is a public health threat? And the overwhelming question, that the answer to that overwhelmingly clear question is yes, of course the Department of Health has to follow law if they want to remove somebody from society because they feel that they're a public health threat. If they don't have to follow the law, then what's the point of having the New York State Legislature? And as far as standing is concerned, Silver v. Pataki, which is a Court of Appeals case, which is relied on heavily by opposing counsel, clearly says, when it's read and cited properly, clearly says that the judicial branch will always be available to resolve disputes between the other two branches of government when the other two branches of government are combating who has what power and who can do what. That is very clearly stated by the Court of Appeals in Silver v. Pataki. That court also said that if you are a legislator and you feel that you have been wronged by another branch of government because your power was either your vote was nullified or your power was usurped by another branch of government, you have standing. Silver v. Pataki makes it clear, and there are other Court of Appeals cases, but this is the one that opposing counsel relies upon, makes it clear, legislators have standing, and you only need one legislator. You don't have to have, Silver v. Pataki says that as well, you don't have to have the whole legislature on board. Even just one legislator has standing to sue if he or she thinks that their power has been usurped by another branch or their vote has been nullified. And since day one, we have been arguing that the power of the legislators has been usurped. That's the only reason you use Boreali.
Yeah, I think we understand that.
So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. If you do not, then I rest on my brief.
Thank you very much.
Take a look at all the people behind her that were interested in this case and start to listen to the cheering for this lawyer.
Should we wait a moment? I assume most of these people don't want to stay in here. You're more than welcome to stay if you'd like to listen to all the evidence.
They're clapping for the lawyer. This doesn't happen in court. They're clapping for her, and wait till you hear the cheers outside.
Okay, we're going to continue with court. The next case for oral argument is...
This lady just doesn't care. And the lady on the bottom left just sat there completely unimpressed. I don't know what's wrong with these people, but they came down with a decision in saying that it was something similar to this, in using a lot of legalese. They agree with the governor that this case should be thrown out because the people that are bringing it forward to the courts haven't actually been wronged, and they don't have, something that happened to them that they're trying to bring this case forward. They're saying you have to have actually been wronged, like thrown in one of these places and been wronged to then bring this forward. And this lawyer says that is not true. People can bring this forward to stop it from happening first. And she said that they can't, what they're saying is that technically you can't do that. And she's saying that's not true. That is not what's written. So these judges allowed the governor to do this. It is so corrupt in New York. It's like Canada. Everyone is just bought and paid for, quiet. And this is literally the World Health Organization coming in and doing this. This is one world government shit. This is New World Order shit. This is, remember, she was saying, one place that decides for everybody, and screw the courts, screw the judicial process, screw the Constitution and different judges hearing things out. It's going to be one body that gives rules for everything. And remember, Klaus Schwab said a few years ago, to do the things we want to do with the Great Reset, we're going to have to get around a lot of the government's laws and legal systems. So I feel sorry for you guys in New York. I feel sorry for us here in British Columbia as well. That awful governor, Kathy Hochul, is a lot like Bonnie Henry, who's in British Columbia, Canada. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please share this. It's very important that people know that this is happening. This is not conspiracy theory. And Christmas is coming if you guys want. There's iTerra devices, the healing wands for sale. You can look in my description for that. Also, tower gardens. You may want to get yourself a tower garden to grow your vegetables and leafy greens in your home so that you always have them free of the spray that's happening in the skies. Thank you guys so much. And if you want to buy me a coffee for Christmas, I'll accept, or please just send a prayer that our doctors get back to work and that the people in New York say no to this. It's obvious that the courts have been corrupted, and it's obviously that the only way anything is going to stop is the people. It's the people.